The first sound wasn't the music or the clinking of glasses. It was the sharp, brittle crack of breaking crystal, slicing through the ballroom like a warning flare. It happened so fast that even the chandeliers seemed to hold their breath. One moment, Nia Brooks was gliding between tables with a tray balanced on her hand, her steps quiet, careful, almost invisible. And the next moment, the billionaire's daughter, Avery LaFontaine, twisted her heel on a patch of spilled champagne, jerked backward, and caught the edge of Nia's tray with the jeweled sleeve of her dress. Glasses tilted, liquid flashed in the air. Then gravity did the rest. The tray tipped. The glasses fell, smashing against the polished marble floor in a scatter of glittering shards. The music cut short. The crowd gasped, but nothing sliced deeper than the laugh that followed. Avery turned slowly, her diamond earrings swinging like tiny weapons, her lips rising into the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her gaze locked onto Nia, not with confusion, not with embarrassment, but with something colder, something practiced, something cruel. And then she let out a single, sharp laugh that echoed off every gold surface in the ballroom. "Maybe learn how to walk," she sneered, tilting her head with theatrical annoyance. "Or is that too much for you?" Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The silence around her carried it farther than any microphone could. People stiffened. A few looked away. A few tried not to smirk. And some, the ones who remembered what it felt like to be small, let guilt flicker across their eyes before they quickly buried it. Nia stood frozen. Her breath stuck like a stone in the center of her chest. Her fingers tingled as if still gripping the tray that was no longer there. She looked down at the broken glasses, the champagne spreading like a stain at her feet, and she felt the burn rise behind her eyes. Not the burn of tears. She was too used to moments like this to cry in public, but the burn of humiliation mixing with all the hurt she had learned to swallow over the years. She bent down instinctively, gathering the shards with trembling hands because that's what service workers do. They clean up messes, even the ones that weren't theirs. Avery's friends giggled behind her, covering their mouths like they were hiding jokes too expensive for the room to understand. Avery tossed her hair, the diamonds at her wrist catching the light as she strutted away. As if Nia were nothing more than a bump in the carpet, Nia whispered an apology, though she didn't know who she was apologizing to. To Avery, to the guests, to the floor itself. The word felt small, fragile, broken like the glass she held. And still, not a single person stepped forward to help her. Not one hand reached down. Not one voice said, "It's okay." The ballroom had moved on already, picking up its music, its gossip, its clinking glasses, as though her humiliation had been part of the evening's entertainment. But beneath Nia's calm face, the face she had learned to keep still, quiet, polite, something stirred. Her chest tightened, not from shame, but from memory. Inside her lived a voice she had locked away years ago, a voice she once trusted, a voice that used to rise without fear, without permission, without apology. A voice that used to make rooms fall silent, not from humiliation, but from awe. That voice had been hers before life taught her that some people got microphones, and some people got trays. The music swelled again, drowning out her thoughts, and Nia pushed the broken glass into the bin, wiping her damp hands on the apron tied tight around her waist. She inhaled slowly and forced herself to return to work. She nodded at the head waiter, who pretended he didn't see her shaking. She smiled at guests who didn't meet her eyes. She moved through the ballroom like a shadow, quiet, unthreatening, necessary, but unnoticed. And then, as she passed by a tall mirrored column, she caught her own reflection. It startled her, the streak of champagne across her cheek, the faint smudge of oil from earlier kitchen prep, the sadness sitting deep behind her eyes. For a moment, she didn't see a waitress. She saw a girl on a church stage with her hands wrapped around a microphone, her voice filling a room full of people who actually listened. She saw her mother smiling in the front row. She saw herself smiling back. But then the reflection flickered as someone walked past, and the vision broke. She was back in the ballroom, back in her uniform, back in her place still. Something inside her whispered, "Not forever." Avery's laugh replayed in her mind like a taunt that refused to fade. But this time, something felt different. It didn't land the way it used to. It didn't crush her the way life expected it to. Instead, it struck something buried deep and lit a spark she hadn't felt in years. It was small. So small she barely noticed it at first. But it was there. A quiet rise inside her chest. A push, a pulse. A reminder that humiliation doesn't always shrink a person. Sometimes it wakes them up. As she walked past Avery's table again, the billionaire's daughter looked at her with the same smirk. The smirk of someone who believed the world existed to applaud her. She raised her glass as if in a toast, whispering something that made her friends burst into laughter again. But this time, Nia didn't drop her gaze. Just for half a second, she met Avery's eyes, calm, unbroken, steady. Avery blinked, just once. The tiniest twitch of confusion crossed her face. The confusion of a girl who had never been looked at by someone who wasn't impressed or afraid. Nia walked on. The tray balanced perfectly in her hand. No tremble now. No shame. Just a quiet fire building behind her ribs. What no one in that glittering ballroom knew, not Avery, not the guests, not even Nia herself, was that the night wasn't done with her. Life had been waiting for this moment, this spark, this humiliation. Because it was the very thing that would force her voice, the voice she had buried, silenced, forgotten, to rise again tonight, under crystal lights and cruel stares. Her story had finally begun. The night kept moving even though Nia felt stuck in place, as if the room were drifting forward without her. Music flowed again, laughter rose again, glasses clicked together like nothing had happened. But humiliation has a way of clinging to a person long after everyone else lets it go. It sits on the skin like dust, heavy and hard to brush off. And as Nia walked through the ballroom with her tray, she could feel eyes on her, not directly, not obviously, but in the half seconds when someone glanced at her and looked away too fast. Whispers slipped through the air like thin cracks. She dropped them all. Avery was furious. Poor girl. Shouldn't someone teach her how to carry a tray? They didn't say it loud enough to be accused, just loud enough to be felt. Nia kept her face blank. That's what service teaches you. Never let your thoughts reach your expression. She floated from table to table, offering drinks with a soft voice and a steady hand. But inside, her heart was trembling like a trapped thing. Every time Avery's laugh replayed in her mind, something inside her tightened. Not anger. Not yet, but something close, something warm and rising, like a flame licking the edge of AMATCHSTICK. Avery, meanwhile, was glowing in the center of the room like she had personally invented the night. Her hair shimmered, her diamonds caught every beam of light, and she kept performing for every camera she saw, leaning into her friends, whispering, posing, flipping her hair like she was auditioning for a movie only she starred in. Every time Nia passed by, Avery's eyes flickered with annoyance, as if Nia's presence were an inconvenience, a stain on the evening she believed she owned. When Nia approached her table again with hors d'oeuvres, Avery didn't hesitate. She smirked at her friends, lifted her hand dramatically, and said just loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Careful. Try not to drop everything this time. We're wearing real designer clothes." The girls at the table burst into laughter. The kind that's more for cruelty than comedy. Nia's hand tightened around the tray. For half a moment, she wanted to say something, anything, to push back. But her voice stayed quiet, locked behind years of being taught that speaking up only made things worse. She placed the small plates down with practiced calm. Not a single dish wobbled, not a single hand shook, and yet Avery still frowned at her, disappointed that her jab hadn't broken anything this time. Nia stepped away. Her breath was short. Her chest was tight. She walked toward the back of the room where servers gathered between rounds. She leaned against the wall for a second, letting the cool surface steady her. And that's when it happened. A voice from behind her. "You all right, sweetheart?" It was Mr. Jimenez, one of the oldest servers on staff. He'd been in service for 35 years. long enough to know exactly what kind of wound Avery's words had left. Nia nodded quickly. "I'm fine, you're not," he said. "But it's okay. I just want you to know. You handled it better than most people ever could." She didn't answer. Her throat was too tight. He hesitated, looking at her tray, then at her face. "And I heard you sing once. A long time ago. At that staff holiday party. You remember that?" Nia blinked, surprised. "That was years ago." He nodded. "Years or not, your voice stayed with me. Some gifts don't fade, no matter how much life tries to bury them." Her chest tightened again, but this time, not from pain. The words touched something she had hidden from even herself. "I haven't sung in forever," she whispered. He shrugged. "Maybe it's time to remember how." Before Nia could speak, the head coordinator rushed up, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. She looked stressed, panicked, holding a clipboard that shook in her hands. "Everyone, heads up," she said. "The performer for the gala's tribute segment just canceled. 5 minutes notice. We don't have anyone to take the mic, and the program can't continue without it. We need someone, anyone, who can hold the room. Does anyone here know a singer?" People glanced at each other, shaking their heads. The coordinator muttered something under her breath, pacing as she scanned the crowd for a miracle that wasn't coming. The billionaire father, Samuel LaFontaine, was already looking irritated, whispering harshly to the event staff. Avery was rolling her eyes dramatically, saying, "Seriously, this is supposed to be a billionaire-level event. How does something like this even happen?" Mr. Jimenez glanced at Nia again. A silent moment passed between them. Then he whispered, "Say something." Nia froze, her voice. "Here? In front of these people? In front of Avery?" "No," she said softly. I can't." "You can," he said gently. Her breathing quickened. A memory flickered, her mother's hands clasped around hers the morning she left her last audition. A judge telling her she was talented but not marketable. A choir director saying her voice was too emotional for controlled group performance. Every word that pushed her into silence, replayed like ghosts rising from the floor. And yet, beneath all that noise, she felt something else. That spark, the one Avery had accidentally struck a weight. The room grew more restless. Guests murmured. Cameras shifted. Avery crossed her arms and said loudly, "Can someone please fix this disaster?" Nia inhaled, slow, deep, steady, the way she used to before every song she ever sang. She stepped forward. Not fast, not confidently, but steadily. The coordinator saw her and frowned. "Yes, can I help you?" Nia swallowed. I can fill in." Laughter flickered across the room instantly. A few guests raised their brows. A server giggled. Even the coordinator hesitated. You can sing." Nia nodded. Avery's single quotes as scoff cut through the space like a blade. "Oh, please. She can't even carry a tray, and now she wants to carry a song." Her friend snickered. Nia didn't look at her. She didn't need to. The mic was handed to her. Cold metal touched her palm, and instantly her heart felt like it was beating inside her throat. The ballroom lights shifted slightly. The chandeliers hummed quietly. The music stopped. The room stilled in that rare way a room does when something unexpected, something important, is about to happen. She looked at the crowd, at the expensive gowns, the glittering glasses, the polished marble, the eyes waiting for her to fail. She closed her eyes for half a second, and then she sang. A single note, careful, trembling, slipped from her lips. The room quieted further. She took another breath. The next note rose smoother, stronger, then another, and another. Her voice unfurled into the room like a slow sunrise, warm and aching and impossible to ignore. Conversations died mid-sentence, glasses lowered midair. The billionaire's jaw loosened. Avery's smile fell apart. Nia's voice grew. It filled the ballroom with every emotion she buried. Hope, heartbreak, longing, strength. The years she spent silencing herself just to survive. Her voice held it all, and it didn't just fill the room. It changed it, softened it, broke open something inside people who thought they were unshakable. Tears welled in eyes across the tables. Even the staff paused, stunned. Avery sat frozen. Her breath stuck the same way Nia's had been earlier. Only now, for the first time in her life, Avery felt small. The song went on, deeper and more powerful, and by the time it reached its final note, the entire ballroom was leaning toward her, as if afraid to breathe and break the moment. And long before the applause hit, long before the crowd rose to their feet, long before the billionaire wiped his eyes, everyone knew Nia Brooks was not the girl Avery laughed at. She was something else entirely, something extraordinary. The final echo of Nia's last note drifted through the ballroom like a breath no one dared release. It hung in the air, trembling with beauty and truth, touching the very edges of the room the way a sunrise pushes back the darkest shadows. For a heartbeat, the whole world seemed to stop. Not a fork lifted, not a whisper stirred, not even the chandeliers dared to rattle. It was a silence born from awe, the kind that only arrives when someone reveals more of their soul than anyone expects. Nia stood there under the spotlight, chest rising and falling, hands trembling around the mic. Her eyes stayed lowered, as if she were afraid to look up and find the room unchanged, as if her voice hadn't just cracked it open. Then, slowly, she raised her head, and she saw them. The elite, the wealthy, the untouchable, people who had never paused for a server in their lives, and they were staring at her, like they had just seen something holy. Eyes glistened, lips trembled. A woman clutched her chest. A man brushed away tears he pretended weren't there. The billionaire father, Samuel LaFontaine, was frozen in place. His mouth parted slightly like he was seeing a miracle perform where he least expected one. But the face that struck Nia the most wasn't his dad, it was Avery LaFontaine. The girl wrapped in diamonds and entitlement, the girl who mocked her, the girl who laughed loud enough to break a soul in half, was sitting at her table with her hands gripping the edges like her world had started tilting. Her mascara smudged along her lower lashes. Her mouth parted. Her eyes locked on Nia as if she couldn't recognize the person standing under the lights because she couldn't. This wasn't the waitress she dismissed. This wasn't the girl she humiliated. This was someone Avery never imagined existed. Someone powerful, someone radiant, someone who didn't need diamonds to shine. And under the weight of that truth, Avery shrank. Before the applause could come, before the room could explode with sound, Nia slowly stepped back from the mic. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She gave the stagehand a small nod, then turned. But she didn't make it to steps before she heard it. Hands clapping. Soft at first, then louder, growing, spreading, pouring across the ballroom like a tidal wave. Chairs scraped as people stood. Glasses rattled as tables shook from the force of a rising ovation. A chorus of cheers and whistles burst from every direction, hitting her like a warm gust of wind. She turned around. They were all standing, every single person in that gold-drenched room. Every diamond, every suit, every executive, every celebrity. People who prided themselves on being unshakable were wiping tears from their faces as they applauded her like she was the star they'd been waiting for. Nia's lips parted, trembling. She didn't know what to do with that much light pointing at her. She'd spent years stepping out of the spotlight, shrinking her presence, making herself small. And now the spotlight wasn't asking her permission. It was demanding her truth. The billionaire father was the first to approach her. He walked with slow steps, his face soft, his eyes glossy. He looked nothing like the polished, untouchable mogul the world knew. He stopped in front of her, took a breath, and said, "Miss Brooks, I have never heard anything like that in my life." His voice cracked. "You didn't sing," he whispered. "You told a story. You shared a heart, and it changed this room." Nia swallowed, unsure how to respond. Compliments from strangers she could dismiss. But this was different. This felt like someone seeing her for the first time in years. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. He shook his head. "Don't thank me. You gave us a gift." Then he stepped aside, and there she was, Avery, walking toward her with a hesitation so foreign it looked like She was learning to walk all over again. Her shoulders were no longer high. Her chin wasn't lifted. Her eyes weren't sharp. She looked young, unsure, and for the first time, human. She stopped a few feet away for a long moment. She didn't speak. She just stared at Nia like she needed to gather every ounce of courage in her diamond-studded body. Then Avery whispered, I didn't know. Nia blinked. Didn't know what? Avery swallowed hard, glancing around as if the walls might collapse if she said the wrong thing. Didn't know who you really were, she said softly. I judged you. I mocked you. I made your job harder. And I was wrong. Her voice broke. I was so wrong. The room stilled again, listening. Avery wiped at her eyes, shaking her head. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for how I treated you. Nia breathed in deeply. Apologies from the powerful usually came wrapped in excuses or wrapped in silence. But this felt real, raw, new. It's okay, Nia said gently. Avery shook her head. No, it's not. You deserved better. Nia hesitated. Then she said something she never prepared. Something she didn't even know she believed until the words left her mouth. We all deserve better. Avery's breath caught. Silence spread once more. But this time, it held something warm, not cold. The crowd hadn't dispersed permanently. They stood in clusters, watching the two women who had become the center of the story they didn't expect to witness tonight. The billionaire father stepped next to his daughter, placing a hand on her shoulder. But he wasn't looking at Avery. His eyes stayed on Nia, soft with gratitude. Miss Brooks, he said, would you consider performing for us again? Not tonight, unless you want to. But in the future, I would be honored to sponsor your training. Your music deserves a stage bigger than this room. The offer hit Nia like a wave. Her breath hitched. She remembered every audition she walked away from, every song she silenced, every dream she folded into the pockets of an apron. And for the first time in her life, she felt something steady rising inside her. I loved it, she whispered. The billionaire smiled, relief washing over him. Avery wiped her eyes again, but this time, when she looked at Nia, it wasn't through the lens of privilege or power. It was through the lens of respect. Real respect. Because humiliation can make a person cruel, but truth can make them human. The applause returned, lighter, softer, full of hope instead of shock. Nia stepped back again, but this time, she didn't shrink. This time, she let the sound wrap around her like the embrace she'd been denied for years. She looked out over the ballroom, the people, the lights, the stage. And she finally understood. Her voice wasn't just something she lost. It was something the world had been waiting for. The last echoes of applause were still trembling in the chandelier crystals. When the room finally began to settle, the night air felt different now, softer, lighter, as if the weight that had hung above the gala all evening had finally cracked open. Nia stood there, still holding the mic, her fingers trembling not with fear this time, but with something far more powerful. Possibility. She had come into this ballroom as a shadow, a server, someone people looked through. But now, every eye in the room was seeing her, really seeing her, as if she had rearranged the very shape of the night. As the guests slowly took their seats again, conversations erupted like soft waves across the room. People whispered to one another about her voice, her courage, the way she lifted the gala out of disaster and turned it into something unforgettable. Some were wiping tears, still stunned. Others were replaying her notes in their heads, humming softly without realizing. Yet through all of that noise, one thing remained absolutely still. Avery LaFontaine. She stood there, frozen in the aisle between polished tables. Her eyes locked on Nia like she was standing at the center of a truth Avery had never learned to face. Avery's diamond bracelet caught the light as her hand trembled slightly. Her friends hovered behind her, unsure whether to comfort her or stay out of the way. For the first time since she entered the room, Avery didn't look like the billionaire's daughter with money dripping from every inch of her being. She looked small, human, and painfully aware of the weight of her own behavior. Nia set the mic down gently, almost like it was something sacred, then took a slow breath and stepped away from the stage. She didn't know what would happen next, but the moment felt like a page turning, something in the air shifting. As Avery took a hesitant step toward her, Avery's voice was quiet, softer than a whisper. "Nia, can we talk?" The room went still again, not with judgment this time, but with curiosity. Conversations faded. Even the waitstaff paused, their trays hovering in midair, as Avery took another few steps closer. Her chin wasn't lifted. Her shoulders weren't square. Her eyes, usually sharp with superiority, were glossy and unsure. Nia nodded gently. Of course. Avery swallowed hard, then opened her mouth, but the words caught in her throat. She tried again. I want to say something, and I want everyone to hear it." Her voice cracked. "Because I need to face what I did." Her friend shifted uncomfortably. The billionaire father watched with a mixture of surprise and cautious pride. Guests leaned in, sensing that something rare, something real, was about to happen. Avery took a breath so shaky it trembled down to her fingers. "Nia, I'm sorry." The words hung there in the air, fragile and trembling, like a bird finally freed from a cage. Avery blinked, her lashes wet. "I humiliated you. I made jokes at your expense. I treated you like you were beneath me because I thought kindness was something I could choose who to give it to." A tear finally rolled down her cheek, and I was wrong. So wrong. The room didn't clap. They didn't gasp. They just listened, because apologies from people raised to never be wrong were the rarest sound in the world. And I didn't speak. She let Avery continue. "When you sang," Avery's voice softened even more, "I realized I spent my whole life confusing money with worth. I thought expensive things made me special. But I've never done anything in my life as brave as what you did tonight." She shook her head slowly. "You didn't deserve my cruelty. You deserved respect. And I'm sorry I didn't see that." For a long second, Nia just studied her, not with anger, not with pity, but with a kind of gentle truth Avery wasn't used to receiving. Then she nodded once. "Thank you," she said quietly. It takes strength to say that. Avery looked like she might cry all over again. But then, something shifted. She exhaled shakily, relief loosening her shoulders. The billionaire father stepped up then, clearing his throat. His voice was warm, sincere. "Miss Brooks," he said, "I meant what I said earlier. You have a gift, something rare, something this world needs to hear. I'd be honored to sponsor your vocal training, your studio sessions, anything you need to bring that voice wherever it deserves to go." The offer made Nia's heart flutter painfully inside her chest. Years of dreams she had buried began to rise like smoke from a fire that refused to die out. She looked at the billionaire, unsure how to respond. The offer was bigger than her imagination, bigger than anything she'd ever believed possible for herself. But then she found her voice. "Thank you," she said softly. "But I want to start small. I want to earn it. I want people to hear me because I'm ready, not because someone powerful lifted me." The billionaire smiled, a real smile this time. "Then let me help you get ready," he replied simply. "On your terms." Nia felt her eyes sting. A weight she carried for years, silence, doubt, the fear of not being enough, began to crumble around her. She nodded. "I like that," she whispered. The crowd exhaled like they'd been holding their breath through the entire exchange. Avery stepped beside her father, wiping at her eyes again before looking back at Nia. "If you ever need anything," she said softly, "or if you ever want someone to support you in the audience, I'll be there." Nia gave her a small, warm smile. "Thank you, Avery." It wasn't forgiveness wrapped in gold. It wasn't a friendship blossoming instantly. It was something else, something more meaningful. It was a door being opened. The rest of the gala moved differently after that, softer, kinder. Guests approached Nia with gratitude. Waitstaff walked with a bit more pride. Even Avery's friends seemed quieter, more reflective, like they had learned something without being directly taught. And as the night wound down, as the chandeliers dimmed and the final guests slipped out into the cool evening air, Nia stepped outside to breathe. The city was quiet. The stars blinked like soft, distant embers, and she felt something settle inside her. Peace, because tonight, she hadn't just found her voice, she reclaimed it. And as her footsteps echoed along the marble walkway, she understood something she wished the whole world could understand. People reveal who they are in moments of power, but they redefine who they are in moments of humility. And sometimes the quietest person in the room, the one the world looks past, the one carrying trays or sweeping floors or holding back dreams, is the very person fate chooses to lift the world when it isn't paying attention. Nia walked home that night with her head high, her heart full, and her future finally beginning to shine, like a song finally ready to be heard. Never judge someone by the uniform they wear or the job they hold. Respect costs nothing, but cruelty can cost you everything, because the person you look down on today might be the one who rises higher than you tomorrow, with nothing but dignity, courage, and truth in their voice.